features. And as mentioned earlier on, linguistic diversity has to do with the varieties of languages or various languages used within a single context. And that context I mentioned earlier to refer to a district, a region, a country, or maybe globally. All right. We shall be discussing some linguistic terms, find out what multilingualism is, monolingualism is, and what we mean by indigenous language. Then we'll discuss translanguaging, pedagogy, and of course, linguistic diversity in Africa. Right. Now, let's look at the key terms. When they say a monolingual, what does it mean? It simply means that someone who speaks only one language. So if you speak one language, you are referred to as a monolingual. For example, if you go to Europe, Britain, for example, they speak only English. So we can refer to them as for monolingual speakers of English. Those of us here who speak only Dagbani, you can refer to us as the lingua Dagbani speakers. So a monolingual simply means one language. Then a multilingual. Multilingual is when you are able to speak more than two languages. So two languages or more is referred to as well as monolingual. But remember that in linguistic terms, we have what we call a bilingual. A bilingual speaks two languages. So if you speak Dagbani and maybe English, you are a bilingual. And in African classroom, almost every teacher is a bilingual. You speak your native language as well as the English language. Now we have other people who speak more than two languages. 3, 4, 5. Such people are referred to as polyglots. We call them polyglots. But in a situation where two or more languages are used, they will say we are in a bilingual, in a multilingual setting. So multilingualism has to do with communicating in more than two languages. Then when we talk about language varieties, what do we mean by language varieties? Now, language varieties are the different kinds of language you speak. And then within a language, you can have different varieties which we refer to as dialects. For example, if you take English, for example, we have the American English, we have the British English, and then we have the standard Ghanaian English, standard Nigerian English. These are varieties of English. And of course, we know that the British English will have been the standard English. Let's take Dagbani, for example. Dagbani has mostly spoken around Tamale and its environment. Then we have Nayale spoken around Yindi and environment. We have Nanundi spoken around Bibula and its environment. Now, these are varieties that are used within one language. So when we talk about language varieties could mean different languages. It could also mean that different languages within one language. Popular, we know the Arcarno. The Arcarno has a Kapim P, Asante P, and then we have what? Fanti, and these are dialects. And sometimes people refer to them as languages, isn't it? Yeah, but when they are varieties of the Arcarno language, then we have something we call a register. A register simply means a specific language used by a group of people. A specific language used by a group of people. The accountants have their language. The agric people have their language. Even in the classroom, teachers, we have a language. And certain terms are common within such registers. We refer to them as a register, right? So when you talk about language varieties, it can include a register. It can include a dialect, isn't it? Then we have what we call a linguistic repertoire. Now, the linguistic repertoire of an individual are the different languages or varieties of languages individual person is familiar with. Languages that people will speak and you understand. And languages you yourself, you use, we say it's your linguistic word, repertoire. Now, we have people who speak maybe Dagbani in the house. They come to school, they speak English. When they are with their friends, they speak P. You can't describe this as the person's for linguistic repertoire. Languages which you are familiar with can be said to be your linguistic repertoire. Right. Now let's go on. What multilingualism do with languages? There are so many terms that pops up when you are dealing with multilingualism. And let's begin with translation. Of course, everybody understands what translation is. Okay? When you try to translate a particular word or a term from one language to another, sometimes some people say that it's transfer of sounds. For example, if I mention the word God, how will you translate it in P? Onyankopon. Then in the body, let's other languages. Yes. Dagari, Nangmene, yes, any other language? Erade in what? And Fanti. Oh, Mau. So translation is possible in multilingualism because where you are dealing with so many languages, definitely translation will have to set in. You can translate stories, you can translate statements and other things. Then we have what we call code switching. Code switching is a situation where you use two languages at the same time. And then you shift from one language to the other. Probably you are speaking English and then you switch to speak P. Okay? Now, within the code switching, we have something we call code mixing. And a situation where you have in a sentence where you blend two languages. Sometimes you listen to our radio stations and someone will say that before to start the program now. So you have that combination of Dagbani and then what? English. It's a kind of code switching. You are using two languages at the same time to make communication meaningful. Then the TransLanguaging we mentioned earlier. Now, TransLanguaging is a wider tool that defines a situation of using more than one language in a particular conversation. So a situation where you combine maybe code switching and translation, we can say that these are examples of TransLanguaging. For example, in a class, you allow students to use their home languages to explain a concept, and then they move on to use it in English language. So there's the translation component, there is code switching component, and then we can say that you are actually using what we refer to as TransLanguaging. And remember, these are social linguistic terms that are related to multilingualism. And everybody who goes into what we call a multilingual mode, that is when you move from a monolingual state to a multilingual state, definitely you are likely to do translation, isn't it? If you are teaching students and you want to teach them meaning, definitely if you are using their mother tongue, you translate the item from English to their mother tongue to enhance more understanding, right? Good. So, translation, code switching, remember they are examples of TransLanguaging. I know TransLanguaging is a new term. Then we have what we call indigenous languages. When we say an indigenous languages, there are so many terms which are used to define or explain what an indigenous language is. Now, a simple term we can use to replace our indigenous language is called the mother tongue. So I could say that Dagbani is my indigenous language. And I know all of you speak different indigenous languages. Now, these languages are sometimes referred to as local languages when you are using it in the setting of the European languages, isn't it? Then we also use them as regional languages, because some of them are widely spoken in some regions. Let's take Ghana for example. Dagbani is widely spoken in the northern region. You go to Savannah region, then Gunja is widely spoken. In Ashanti region, definitely Ashanti is widely spoken. We both them as well.